For over 4 decades, I'd driven the same winding road home, my old Chevy truck rattling over every pothole the county never cared to fix. Each curve, each sagging fence post, was etched into my bones like a map of my life. That evening, after a grueling 6 hours at the VA clinic and a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, all I wanted was to collapse on my porch, pat my dog's head, and let the quiet of my 40 acres wash over me. But as I turned onto the gravel path hugging the southern edge of my land, something made my foot ease off the gas. A glinting metal fence sliced across my property like a fresh wound, and beside it, a sign, Saw Pine Hollow HOA. Private property. No trespassing. Violators prosecuted. So, I sat there, hands strangling the steering wheel, staring at that sign like it was a rattlesnake. My pulse didn't race, never been the type to flare up quick, but a cold, heavy weight settled in my chest. This wasn't just dirt and grass. This land was my blood, bought by my father in '73. I was a scrawny 17-year-old when we planted those oaks, one still standing, crooked but proud like the men who raised it. I climbed out, boots crunching gravel, and ran my fingers over the sign's slick aluminum. It didn't vanish, so I did what felt right. I ripped it down, screws shrieking, and tossed it into my truck bed with a clang that echoed like a gunshot. Then I drove straight to the Pine Hollow HOA office, a sterile box of fake columns and beige arrogance. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and lies. The receptionist, barely out of high school, typed with nails sharp enough to draw blood. "I need whoever's behind the fence on lot 37, I said, voice steady. She didn't look up. "Appointment." "No, but I've got 40 acres someone's trying to steal. That's worth 10 minutes. She froze, then tapped her keyboard. "Name?" "Samuel Carter." Her eyes flicked to the screen, and she grabbed the phone. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, Mr. Carter's here." I'd heard of Richard Thornton, HOA president, lord of this beige empire, but I didn't expect his wife to glide out beside him. Laura Thornton was all sharp edges, blonde hair, pulled tight, heels clicking like a judge's gavel. "Mr. Carter," she said, smile thin as a blade. "How kind of you to VY sit. I'm Laura, counsel for Pine Hollow HOA. This is Richard." Her eyes sized me up like I was livestock. "Nice fence," I said, leaning in. Her smile didn't budge. The boundary needed an upgrade. "Funny, I don't recall asking for one on my land." Richard coughed. "Mr. Carter, your property was annexed into Pine Hollow's Re-VY said map in 2020. All legal." I snorted. "I've got deed from the '70s, real signatures, not some clip art nonsense." Laura tilted her head, like a teacher humoring a slow kid. "Annexation doesn't require consent for developmental integration. It passed in a community vote." "Community?" I said, dropping the torn sign on her desk with a metallic slap. "Your community's trespassing." Laura's knuckles whitened on her clipboard, but her face stayed smooth. Richard mumbled about staying amicable. "Sure," I said, "soon as you rip that fence out of my ground." They didn't answer. Laura's smile tightened, and she murmured, "Have a nice day, Mr. Carter." I left, but not before glimpsing a map on the Walmy land shaded in HOA colors. Like 50 years of my life had been erased with a marker. The war hadn't started, but the first shot had been fired. Next morning, the sun rose slow, like it knew trouble was brewing. I was up early, sipping coffee that tasted like ash, watching frost melt off the porch. My grandson, Ethan, 12 and full of fire, bounded out with our dog, Rusty, chasing squirrels he'd never catch. Just another day on our land. Except it wasn't. As we walked the old trail behind the barn, I heard tires chewing gravel, not a neighbor's pickup, not the mailman. A gray SUV with tinted windows roared down a path the HOA had carved over my irrigation line. Behind it, a sheriff's cruiser crept up. The SUV's driver, a puffed-up HOA rep in a polo, barked, "Identify yourself." I kept my voice low. "I live here." "You explain." The sheriff, young and tired, stepped forward. "We got a complaint. Trespassing on HOA land." Ethan's grip tightened on Rusty's leash. My jaw clenched. This land's mine since Nixon was president and gas was 29 cents. The sheriff shifted. "Until we sort this, vacate the premises." I wasn't about to brawl in front of Ethan, so I nodded, called Rusty, and walked back slow, letting them stew in their own stupidity. Back home, Ethan's voice cracked from the kitchen. "Grandpa, what's this?" He held a plain envelope. No address, smelling faintly of bleach. Inside, a typed note. "Saw he's making this harder than it needs to be. Accidents happen. Kids wander. Dogs get sick. Move on before something breaks." So my hands didn't shake, but something inside me snapped clean. I folded the note, tucked it in my pocket, and checked the cameras I'd installed last year. One clip showed a hooded figure at 4 a.m., tossing a bag through the trees. No plates on the SUV parked nearby. Amateurs. That night, I didn't sleep, my Smith & Wesson in the drawer, camera feeds glowing on my laptop, daring them to come back. They did, but not how I expected. Next morning, Rusty froze on the porch, growling low. I stepped out and saw them dead rats, bloated, mouths stained blue, scattered like a grim trail. Pinned to a tree, a torn Pine Hollow newsletter with one word in red ink. Saw comply saw. I stood there, staring at that tree like it had betrayed me, then carried Rusty inside like he was glass. I called animal control, logged the footage, and dialed Tom Reese, an old friend who answered on the second ring. "Sam, they came after my dog," I said. Silence. Then, "I'm there tomorrow." Another envelope arrived, plain and unmarked, like a snake in the mailbox. Inside, a map, a spreadsheet, and a note. "So you don't know me, but I work for them. I'm tired of being quiet." Saw the map was an HOA draft, my land marked with red scribbles. Saw forced annexation, quietly saw no vote needed saw. The spreadsheet listed properties, some with dues inflated to thousands. Mine labeled saw project in progress saw. The note said they'd been stealing land for years, faking votes, altering maps. "Saw you're the first to fight. Keep going." Saw I locked the originals in my safe with my father's war medals and the deed. Tom sipped bourbon on my porch that night. "This is enough for an audit," he said, "and to scare them if they know you have it." I nodded. Let them be scared. Then they hit again. Ethan came home with a fake school letter, claiming his residency was under REVYEW, courtesy of Pine Hollow. He looked pale. "Did I do something wrong, Grandpa?" I was already on the phone. The school confirmed it was forged, the principal furious. That night, I sat in the dark, waiting for headlights, but nothing came. Another envelope did. "Saw they know you got the first one. Be careful. Don't stop." So I called Tom. "We go to the county," I said. "Let them lie under oath." He grinned. Now it's a fight. But then Rusty didn't come when I whistled. He always came, hail or thunder. I found it by the compost bins, shaking, eyes bloodshot, vomit streaked with green. I scooped him up, yelling for Ethan to grab the keys. The vet said poison, industrial grade, probably lace bait. "On purpose?" she asked, knowing the answer. "I know it," I said. Rusty barely pulled through. I sat in the waiting room, jaw locked, for 8 hours. Ethan didn't speak the whole ride home, just stared out the window like the world might turn on us next. Camera showed the same hooded figure at 4 a.m., tossing a bag, dodging the lenses. This wasn't intimidation. This was war. By dawn, Tom and I had everything on the kitchen table: maps, deeds, camera stills, vet reports, the informant's letters, the fake school notice. We filed in county court. The legal land seizure, trespassing, harm to minors and animals, harassment, fraud, conspiracy. The clerk read it twice. "Jesus," she said. "Imagine Levying it." I replied. That afternoon, a voicemail from an unknown number whispered, "You're making a mistake, Samuel. Walk away." I saved it and smiled. Scared people slip. They came at me slick this time. Flyers hit every mailbox. Screaming saw, "Dangerous man threatens Pine Hollow Unity saw," with a grainy photo of me looking deranged. Laura Thornton's name was scrawled at the bottom. Her PhD flaunted like a crown. Ethan found one in his locker. The principal pulled me aside. "Anonymous calls about you, Ethan, even Rusty. It's escalating." I thanked him, bought Ethan ice cream, and tried to explain why he couldn't ride his bike alone anymore. Then HOA sent code enforcement to my tree line, claiming unpermitted structures. Tom handed them a cease and desist, and they slunk off, but not before one snapped a photo of my barn. A local news anchor called, wanting an interview. I hesitated and won the spotlight, but thought of the flyers, the poison, the lies. I said yes. On air, I kept it simple. A man defending land his father bought, fighting liars who never asked to carve up my home. This land's been mine for 50 years, I said to the camera. You don't erase that with a new map. Next morning, my mailbox overflowed letters, cookies, a peach cobbler from a neighbor whose husband was fined for his flag. I wasn't alone. Ethan posted a video, just under the oak with Rusty, talking about our land, raw and real. It exploded, 200,000 views by bedtime. That night, the road was quiet, no HOA trucks, just crickets. But I loaded a fresh round just in case. The courthouse was cold, the kind that chills your soul. I wore my old army blazer, a reminder of who I was. Laura and Richard strutted in like royalty, flanked by lawyers in suits worth more than my truck. Laura's eyes met mine, unyielding. The judge, Margaret Holt, late 50s, glasses low, looked like she'd eat lies for breakfast. I liked her. Tom laid out our case. My father's deed, aerial photos, HOA's fake maps. Then our ace mark, a former HOA tech, testified Laura ordered him to fudge boundaries. Fake votes, shred, evy denke. She said Carter was just an old man with no time for lawsuits, he said, staring at her. The room went still. Tom piled on. Forged school letters, dead rats, Rusty's toxicology, the threatening voicemail. Laura sat like stone. Richard sweated through his suit. Their lawyer begged for a recess. Holt shut it down. When I spoke, I stood tall. I've never trespassed, I said, but I've buried family on my land. Raised kids. Ethan learned to ride his bike under my father's oak. You don't steal that because you printed a logo. Holt leaned forward. I see systemic abuse by an organization that thought itself untouchable. Her gavel crashed. She ruled for me. Dulaw $220,000 in damages. HOA's maps voided. Laura's law license suspended. Richard charged with fraud. The HOA dismantled. It was over, but I didn't smile until I saw Ethan and Rusty waiting outside. Then I grinned because the land was ours. Spring came slow, like the land was breathing again. Ethan and I rebuilt the fence. Just us, Rusty stealing nails. We set a post by the oak my father planted, with a plaque Ethan made. Saw veteran lives here. So does the law. Saw I added one below, branded by hand. Saw HOA? Turn around. Saw neighbors stop by with pies, apologies, handshakes. Fear fades when the bully's gone. Mark VY cited, now working for the county, cleaning up the mess he helped expose. You lit the match, he said. I shook my head. You carried the flame. Ethan hung a drawing over the fireplace in oak, a fence, a boy, a dog, an old man with a mug. Below it, saw Homestays Home saw. Reporters called, asking how one man beat the system. Stand where your roots are, I said, and don't move. Now, most mornings I'm on the porch, Rusty snoring, Ethan scribbling homework, the land quiet like it's supposed to be. What do you think? Was I right to tear down that sign and fight, or should I have negotiated with the HOA? Could Ethan's VY Deo have been the real game changer? Or was it the courtroom, EVY Denke? And how far would you go to protect your home? Would you risk everything like I did? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if you felt the fight, and subscribe to hear more stories of standing your ground.